This necklace is made from a lucite drawer pull from the 1970s, chandelier crystals and pieces and parts of old glass and handmade sterling clasp. But it's a mixture. I call it the ice necklace. But I'm pretty
It's fabulous.
I'm pretty populist about my approach to jewelry making. I'll mix gold with telephone wire, sterling with sapphires. It doesn't really matter. Peach pits, rabies tags, they all fit into what I do. As long as the design is cohesive, that's really the inspiration. And what I call my jewelry is 10,000 decisions, because I always look at things never really as they are, but as they could be. And I have an element, and I have to design around it. So I'm focused on that element, and then out of that, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So my choices, rather than getting larger, they become narrowed as I have a piece. Like this piece is an old Bakelite button. There's actually 3 antique buttons here. There's an old Bakelite button. This is a carved mussel shell button. And this is, I think, a dyed mother of pearl button.
Like a sweater button
right.
from the 30s.
And then sterling wire and polymer clay backing. And new and antique glass beads, bone beads, all kinds of things.
Stunning.
I like that piece. That's a new piece. Thank you.
I also like the fact that you incorporate polymer. This is the second piece I've seen that you've done that, and it gives weight to the piece.
And it finishes
the back. You don't actually see it, but of course the back of this was probably all chewed up, or you had to sand something off the back.
Well, I had to cut off the button shank. So the idea is that it should be as nicely finished on the back as it is on the front, and
Always.
to really. So that's, and that's something I've developed over time, is really refining my technique. And that's been, good ideas, or, I have a lot of feeling and joy in my work, and one of the things that I've really concentrated on is to really make it really finely done, so that, however you pick it up, wherever you look at it, it's going to be nice and wearable and quality. And I keep my prices affordable too, because I believe that people shouldn't have to spend tons of money to look nice, and that they can get something from a designer and an artist. And I have a good customer base, because they appreciate my approach to jewelry making.
Well, each has a story.
Yeah.
When you were talking about the story behind so many of the pieces that you've designed, or the inspiration that comes from another story that then gets applied to what you're doing, clients, I'm a designer of interiors, and every time a piece has a story that particularly relates to them, the object becomes more valuable. The object becomes part of their life.
Right.
And what's so refreshing about how you design, and I think it's exceptional, because there are a lot of jewelry designers, heaven knows we're loaded with them, but you look at a finished product and it doesn't always say something to you. It doesn't have the story. It may not have a specific story to you either, but you have the history of it that then becomes a story.
Well, the best compliment I've ever gotten from a client was, your jewelry is thoughtful. And that is really, really true, because I think so much about how the elements go together, and I so carefully select them. It's not random. It is thoughtful. And what I hope to convey through my jewelry is the thoughtfulness and the care and the history of, when people look at it, they say, oh, she put it together that way, so that they can sort of, for a moment, get behind the piece and see it through my eyes, and see the choices and the decisions I made as a designer. And sometimes I surprise myself. Sometimes I'll have these random elements on the table, a lot of random, and there'll just be 2 things butting up against each other, and I thought, oh, I would never put those together.
But I think I will.
But I think I will.
Yes.
And sometimes things come together accidentally, and sometimes, but mostly there's a lot of thought. The mask that I made, which I know you have a photograph of, is made from all recycled elements. And there's the eye hole that has it looks like the bottom of a star. And it's a casting, a plaster and gauze casting of my face. It was a complete casting of my face. And I started to decorate the entire mask, and it was so laborious. I said, I know, I'm gonna cut it, I'm gonna make a phantom mask. And as I cut it, I'm cutting around, and I cut out the eye hole. I cut out the bottom of the eye hole. I'm saying, what did I do? So I fixed it with a piece of wire, a red electrical wire. Biggest mistake, turned into the best part of the mask, because it really gave it tension and interest.
Yes.
So there is the accidental part of designing, which is, which
is the discovery part.
Which is fun.
Yes.
And I surprise myself.
I think your work has discovery in it. I think one of our crew members was looking at this piece beforehand and picked it up and said, oh, I love this, it's so shiny, it's so wonderful. And then she looked at it and she said, are those erasers? And I thought, that's one of the reasons I love what you do so much. There is a sense of discovery for the person who purchased it or owns it, discovers things about it after they've lived with it for a while or after they've worn it for a while. The story, they make their own story in some ways. I have a lot of jewelry from Thomas Mann, and his things are very, very complex and many, many different metals. And I love them because I make a story up about each one, and it's a long story like a children's story. And there was a fox and a bear and anything that's in the piece of jewelry. And I look at your pieces and I see that same thing.
Yeah, that sense of discovery.
That sense of discovery, that playfulness that still is very designerly. Your roses here could come, I could make a fabulous story about this without even talking about the roses, but just the idea that the shells were found by a woman and actually incorporating.
And I tell these stories, and people
and I know you do, it's great.
And people really like that. Because so much of what people buy today, and I always, when people come to my booth at a craft show, because I do 26 fine art and craft shows a year, and when people come to my booth, I always thank them for coming, because I say, you know what, there's a lot of places you could spend your jewelry dollars, but you've chosen to spend them with me. And I think the reason that people are engaged by what I do is because of the thoughtfulness and the contact with the designer, and the fact that I love what I do, and I communicate that in my pieces. It's not lackluster. It's not just a strand of stuff. It has a story, and they buy a connection with the artist, and they get to meet the maker.
Yes.
And so many times, especially now, with so many of the imports, where you're getting things you don't know who makes them or where they came from.
Or even where they came from.
Yeah,
yes,
or
true.
The amount of labor that, could be child labor. You don't know where things are coming from or who made them. And people really, especially in a world that is so fast and so impersonal, are really looking for that connection. And I think that's something that I'm able to provide.
Absolutely.
And also when people come to the booth, a lot of times they ask me, I have a necklace from my grandmother, and I have 3 sisters, and I want to divide it up so we can each can you make me something? But I want it to be special. Or I have an earring, and I lost the other one, can you do something with it? And it's those kinds of really personal and special design projects that somebody says to me, I want something and I want you to make it. I want something special. I love those special things. One of the reasons I stopped wholesaling to stores is I started to feel like an order filler. And one of the things that really juices me in what I do is my connection with my customer. They feed me, I feed them. I learn from them, they inspire me. Yes. I may show them something and they say, well, if you could just make it red or blue. And some people say, no. And I say, sure. Because as a designer, I'm always running out of things. And so I tend to make one-offs or limited editions. And the best thing that can happen to me as a designer is I have this great idea, I reach for the centerpiece, the one that's going to make it, and it's gone.
And we're out of time.
Oh.
The time is gone. I know,
Really?
it's incredible. Victoria, it's been absolutely delightful. And you already know you're coming back because we had so many things to talk about. I know all of you will be thrilled to get another shot at her.
Oh boy.
But I'm sure that you've enjoyed seeing her beautiful work and hearing the stories about them. Thank you so much for being with us on The Total Woman this evening.